As Raina settled into her seat at the cafe, she was caught off guard when she spotted Rick entering and heading straight toward her table. Rick and his wife, Louise, had been neighbors to Raina and her husband, Brad, for nearly 4 years. Though they were a few years older than Raina and Brad, in their early 40s rather than mid-30s, the two couples had become close over time. They had even taken vacations together, both with and without their children. "What a surprise," Raina said, a touch of excitement in her voice, glancing over her shoulder as Rick approached. "Shouldn't you be at work?" she added, raising an eyebrow. Rick gave a small smile and took a seat across from her. "I could ask you the same," he replied with a hint of humor. "I took the afternoon off for some personal matters." "I assume you did the same?" Raina nodded. "It's been a hectic morning, and I just needed a break." Rick glanced around briefly before meeting her eyes. "I didn't realize you liked cafes like this," he remarked. "I'm not a regular," Rick admitted, his gaze holding hers for a moment. Raina quickly looked away. "Honestly, I saw you walking and thought I'd join you. We need to talk." Raina's heart skipped a beat. "Is everything okay? I hope nothing's wrong with Louise." Rick lowered his gaze for a moment, offering her a calm and reassuring smile. "Everything's fine, don't worry. But you and Brad are very important to us, and we know we can count on you. If anything were to happen, I wouldn't hesitate to do the same for you. That's why I needed to come talk." "What's going on?" Raina asked, her voice trembling slightly with concern. "I'm just a little nervous," Rick admitted. "Have you been with him yet?" Raina's face flushed in surprise. "What? I don't know who you're talking about. Who's the guy you mean?" "The one you keep looking at through the door," Rick said casually, his tone almost indifferent. Raina's heart skipped a beat. "Did you, or did you not sleep with him?" "No," Raina stammered, her face burning with embarrassment. She instinctively crossed her arms, trying to shield herself from the tension, but Rick gently shook his head. His expression softened, and after closing his eyes for a brief moment, he opened them again, placing his hand on hers in a reassuring manner. His touch was almost fatherly. "You need to listen to me," Rick said softly. "I'm going to explain what's really going on, what you might think is happening, and most importantly, what he thinks about it. That's the key." Raina nodded, trying to calm her racing thoughts. "He's charming," Rick continued, his voice steady. "Either younger or more successful than Brad, and he seems to have qualities that Brad doesn't. He listens when you need to talk, offers compliments when you're down, and is always there when you want someone to lean on. He's even willing to make sacrifices for you, right?" Raina felt her body tense, unsure how to respond. "How do you know all of this?" she whispered. "Does Frank know?" Rick gave a small nod. "Of course he suspects, and you know he does. But he doesn't have any proof. Still, those suspicions must make him feel like a fool, don't they, Raina?" Raina swallowed hard, her mind racing as Rick continued. "Let me explain what's happened. 2 key things occurred over the past 2 weeks that you missed, and they were connected. Something happened with Mr. Charming, and he needed your support as a friend. You felt obligated. So you missed both your son's birthday and your 9th anniversary dinner to be there for him." Raina's voice trembled as she tried to explain. "Nothing happened between us. We're just friends." Rick's response was blunt. "A kind of friend you keep hidden from your husband because he wouldn't understand. This friend wants to know everything about your husband, so you've shared intimate details with him that you probably wouldn't even share with me. He's also supported you in making it seem like it's all Brad's fault when things go wrong. I bet he's used Brad's suspicions to paint him as a terrible husband." Raina's jaw dropped. "How do you know all of that?" Rick nodded, his expression serious. "Let's be honest. Wasn't it the day you missed your son's birthday or your anniversary dinner that he kissed you and confessed his feelings for you?" Raina's face went pale as she lowered her gaze, her hands trembling slightly. "When I missed our anniversary, it was because he was grieving over an old friend. It just happened, but I stopped it right away." Rick gave a small nod. "Now, let's take a real look at this. your defensive behavior, the fact that you're sitting here right now waiting for him. I think things have gone a bit further than just a kiss. No sex, maybe, but enough that if you caught Brad doing the same, you'd likely call it cheating. And still, you feel partly responsible because Brad isn't the husband you want him to be. Mr. Charming's pointed that out. He's just a friend giving you what you feel is missing at home. Even so, you're drawn to him, and while his attention is flattering, it's also unsettling. You don't plan on crossing that line. You probably convince yourself that nothing's happened. But deep down, part of you feels guilty and hopes Brad never finds out. So, are you going to tell him? Raina asked. So, you admit that I've been right about you? Rick's lips curled into a small smile. I can predict your actions because I understand how you feel. You and I both know the truth. You slept with him, didn't you? Tears filled Raina's eyes as she nodded, her gaze downcast in quiet confirmation. I tried to stop it, Rick. We didn't go all the way, but we were close. I was angry, drunk, and Brad was being, well, stupid. I made a mistake. Rick sighed, his expression softening with sympathy. That's exactly what I thought. You've just proven him right, Raina. Raina wiped her eyes, her voice barely a whisper. No, I'm not going to tell Brad anything. He'll figure it out in his own time, I guess. Okay, Rick continued. Now, let's talk about what Mr. Charming thinks is happening. He sees a woman who's distracted, vulnerable, and ripe for manipulation. Raina flinched but remained silent as Rick raised a hand to calm her. Don't interrupt me, Raina, he said. Mr. Charming isn't as naive as he looks. This isn't his first time around the block. He knows exactly what he's doing. You're assuming he's targeting you, but that's not it. He wants you, sure, but he's also playing a game with Brad. Raina's heart raced. No! He doesn't want to hurt Brad. I'm sure of it. Rick shook his head. It's not about you. It's about Brad. Mr. Charming thrives on taking things from him, getting under his skin, making him feel insecure. He convinced you to skip 2 major events that would have meant something to Brad. To show you that, Rick's voice was firm as he spoke. He means more to you than your husband, doesn't he? Think about it. Your husband sat waiting for you at the restaurant while you were in Mr. Charming's arms. You texted him an excuse about your friend getting food poisoning, but you didn't even bother to come up with a real name, did you? And now here you are, skipping work for him. You've made it clear where your priorities lie, and it's not with your marriage. Raina's gaze dropped, her face flushed with embarrassment. She tried to find the words but couldn't. Rick continued. You think it's just a coincidence that the crisis with Mr. Charming happened on the same days you missed those important moments with your husband? I don't think so. Brad's birthday is coming up in 3 weeks. Are you really going to let this happen again? I won't let it happen again, Raina whispered, though the doubt lingered in her mind. Rick raised an eyebrow. You were with him while your husband waited for you at the restaurant. Don't kid yourself, Raina. It's not just about him wanting you. He's playing a game with Brad, manipulating you, making you question everything. He knows Brad has every reason to be suspicious, and he's using that to push you toward the line where you feel it's all justified. He needs that rift between you two. He wants to break you, and once he feels he's won, he'll let Brad find out. Raina's eyes widened, her voice trembling. How do you know all of this? Rick smiled, his expression almost sympathetic. Louise and I have been happily married for years, but I haven't always been. I know how these situations unfold, Raina. You have 2 choices. You can keep lying to yourself, convincing yourself this won't turn into something more, or you can face reality, end this now, and try to save your marriage. Raina's chest tightened. I don't want Brad to find out, she whispered, almost pleading. Rick sighed and shook his head. If you continue down this path, you won't have a choice. Mr. Charming will make sure Brad finds out. He might even twist the truth about what's really happened. You need to stop this before it's too late. Tears welled up in Raina's eyes. Please, I can't let him know. Rick moved toward her, pulling her into a brief hug and whispering softly, then Don't do anything. Don't even give him a kiss on the cheek. If Brad finds out, it'll be worse for both of you. If you keep this up, he'll be certain of what's been going on." Just then, a voice interrupted them. "Is that man bothering you?" Rick turned to see a tall, slender man with a thick beard standing nearby. "You must be Reed," Rick said, extending his hand. Reed hesitated but shook Rick's hand. Rick squeezed it firmly, pulling him closer and whispering in his ear, "Listen carefully. If you try anything stupid, I'll make sure your finger ends up broken. Don't talk to my wife. Don't talk about her. Understand the consequences." Reed winced as Rick released his grip. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Rick leaned in, speaking low. "Since you're so interested, let me make it clear. I'm the only one you need to be talking to about this. You've got your hand in the cookie jar, but don't be foolish enough to lose it over something as ridiculous as her. She's not worth it." Reed rubbed his hand, clearly shaken. "No, she's not. Definitely not." Rick stood up straight, his face hardening. "You've got a second chance, Raina. Go home and be the wife your husband deserves. I know it won't be easy, but tell him the truth. Tell him he was right to be suspicious, but that you stopped before it went too far. Don't mention me. It's better that way. Brad will be angry, but he'll want to move forward. Trust me. He'll be relieved to know the truth." Raina wiped her eyes, still trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. Rick's voice softened. "I didn't do it for you, Raina. I did it for Brad, and to make up for my own mistakes. Take care,